Europe thought large-scale wars were buried in history books. Then, before dawn on February 24, 2022, missiles ripped through Ukrainian skies, shattering not just cities, but a global illusion. What began as a special military operation, according to Moscow, quickly revealed itself as Europe's most violent conflict since World War II. Yet this war did not start in 2022. Its roots stretch back to 2014 and even deeper, into centuries of shared contested history between Russia and Ukraine. By late 2025, the consequences are staggering. According to Encyclopedia Britannica, more than 8 million Ukrainians fled the country, another 8 million were internally displaced, and at least 13,000 to 16,000 civilians were confirmed killed, with real numbers likely much higher. Military casualties on both sides run into hundreds of thousands, making this a war of attrition with no easy end. This is not just a regional conflict, it has reshaped global security, energy markets, NATO strategy, international law, and great power rivalry. To understand where this war stands today and where it may go next, we must go back to the beginning. I'm Mehwish Ali, and you're watching Crash CSS, where current affairs meet clarity. To grasp why this war became inevitable, one must look beyond tanks and treaties, and into history, identity, and memory. Russia and Ukraine are not strangers forced into conflict. They are neighbors bound by centuries of shared past and contested narratives. Both trace their origins to Kievan Rus, a medieval polity centered in Kiev that laid the cultural foundations of Slavic civilization. Yet over time, shared ancestry gave way to divergent political destinies. Ukraine's geography made it a prize for empires. Its eastern territories were absorbed into the Russian Empire by the late 18th century, while western regions fell under Polish and Austro-Hungarian control. This division produced lasting differences in language, religion, and worldview, differences that still shape Ukrainian politics today. As National Geographic observes, Ukraine has long existed in a precarious position between East and West, pulled simultaneously toward Moscow and Europe. The trauma of the 20th century deepened these divisions. Under Soviet rule, Ukraine suffered catastrophes that etched collective memory into national identity. The Holodomor famine of the 1930s, caused by Stalin's forced collectivization, killed millions and remains a defining wound in Ukrainian history. World War II turned Ukrainian lands into killing fields, and post-war Soviet rule suppressed national expression even as it industrialized the region. When the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991, Ukraine's independence was not merely administrative, it was existential. The overwhelming vote for independence that year is widely regarded by historians as the moment that sealed the USSR's fate. Yet independence did not bring stability. Ukraine emerged as a sovereign state still economically linked to Russia, culturally divided, and geopolitically exposed. For Moscow, Ukraine was never just another neighbor. It was a cornerstone of Russian historical identity and regional power. This unresolved tension between Ukrainian sovereignty and Russian influence would eventually explode. The present war did not erupt overnight. Its immediate origins lie in the political upheaval of 2013-2014, when Ukraine's internal struggle collided head-on with great power rivalry. President Viktor Yanukovych, widely viewed as pro-Kremlin, abruptly withdrew from a planned European Union association agreement after pressure from Moscow. That decision triggered mass protests in Kyiv's Independence Square, the Euromaidan movement, as Ukrainians demanded closer integration with Europe and an end to corruption. What followed was a dramatic unraveling of the Ukrainian state. A violent crackdown in February 2014 left dozens dead and shocked the nation. Yanukovych fled the country, and a new pro-Western interim government took power. Russia framed these events as a Western-engineered coup, an interpretation that still underpins Kremlin rhetoric today. Within weeks, Moscow acted. In February and March 2014, Russian forces covertly seized Crimea, staging a rapid annexation condemned by the international community. Shortly afterward, armed separatist movements, backed politically, militarily, and logistically by Russia, rose up in Donetsk and Luhansk. What began as unrest quickly hardened into armed conflict. Despite diplomatic efforts, including the Minsk agreements, fighting never truly ceased. By early 2022, more than 14,000 people had already been killed in eastern Ukraine, according to Britannica. Ukraine was living through a low-intensity war that the world largely ignored, until Russia decided to escalate it dramatically. When Russian forces crossed into Ukraine on February 24, 2022, the shock reverberated far beyond Eastern Europe. Missiles struck cities across the country, and armored columns advanced from multiple directions. Moscow claimed the invasion was necessary to demilitarize and denazify Ukraine and accused Kiev of genocide, claims widely dismissed by international observers as baseless. The invasion was designed as a rapid decapitation strike. Intelligence later revealed that Russian planners expected to seize Kiev within days, overthrow the Ukrainian government, and install a compliant regime. Instead, they encountered fierce resistance. Ukrainian forces, supported by popular mobilization and effective use of Western-supplied weapons, halted the advance. By April 2022, Russian troops withdrew from northern Ukraine, leaving behind scenes of devastation. The discovery of executed civilians in Bucha became a turning point, galvanizing global support for Ukraine and reinforcing accusations of war crimes. Russia denied responsibility, but the political damage was irreversible. Having failed to win quickly, Moscow shifted strategy. The war entered a new phase focused on territorial conquest in the Donbass and southern Ukraine. Russia captured key cities such as Mariupol after brutal sieges, and by mid-2022 occupied roughly 20% of Ukrainian territory. The illegal annexation of 4 Ukrainian regions in September 2022 marked a sharp escalation, even as Ukraine, bolstered by billions of dollars in Western military aid, proved increasingly capable of striking back. By 2023, it was clear that neither side could achieve a decisive victory quickly. The war settled into a grinding struggle defined by trenches, artillery duels, and incremental gains measured in meters rather than miles. Russia mobilized hundreds of thousands of reservists, absorbing massive casualties to stabilize its front lines. Ukraine, meanwhile, prepared counteroffensives with advanced Western equipment, including tanks, rocket systems, and air defenses. The destruction of the Kakhovka Dam in June 2023 symbolized the war's expanding human and environmental cost. The flooding devastated southern Ukraine, displaced thousands, and was widely condemned as an act of environmental warfare. At the same time, Russia intensified drone and missile strikes against Ukrainian infrastructure, particularly the energy grid, seeking to weaken civilian morale. Ukraine's long-anticipated summer counteroffensive demonstrated both progress and limits. Ukrainian forces broke through initial Russian defenses in places like Robotyne, but heavily fortified lines, minefields, and constant artillery fire prevented a strategic breakthrough. Battles such as Bakhmut illustrated the war's brutal logic, enormous losses for limited territorial change. Strategically, 2023 revealed a sobering truth. Military power alone would not deliver a clean victory. The conflict had become one of endurance, economic, political, and social. As the war dragged into 2024 and 2025, geopolitics increasingly shaped its trajectory. The return of Donald Trump to the U.S. presidency in January 2025 marked a potential inflection point. Trump openly questioned the sustainability of indefinite support for Ukraine and pushed for negotiations, reflecting growing war fatigue in parts of the West. Europe faced its own dilemmas. Energy insecurity, refugee flows, and economic strain tested unity, even as Eastern NATO members insisted that abandoning Ukraine would invite further aggression. One of the most consequential developments came in December 2025, when the European Union agreed to indefinitely freeze $210 billion in Russian central bank assets, with plans to channel up to $165 billion toward Ukraine's budget and reconstruction. The move was unprecedented, controversial, and legally complex, but symbolically powerful. On the battlefield, Russia continued making slow, grinding advances, gaining an average of 176 square miles per month in 2025, according to Russia Matters. Ukraine responded asymmetrically, expanding drone strikes deep into Russian territory and targeting military leadership, including assassinations inside Moscow. The war was no longer confined to Ukrainian soil. By late 2025, the accumulated cost of war pushed diplomacy back onto the agenda. Indirect talks involving the United States, Ukraine, and Russia took place in Miami, signaling the most serious attempt at negotiation since the invasion began. President Volodymyr Zelensky cautiously expressed optimism, describing the talks as close to a real result, while warning that Russia must be compelled to negotiate sincerely, yet trust remained fragile. Even as talks progressed, Russia launched one of the largest aerial assaults of the war in December 2025, killing civilians, including a child, and plunging parts of Ukraine into darkness during winter. The timing reinforced Kyiv's argument that Moscow was using violence as leverage. As the year ended, the outcome remained uncertain. Ukraine had demonstrated extraordinary resilience, but faced the reality of fighting a larger adversary. Russia retained occupied territory. Despite sanctions and military losses, any peace would demand painful compromises, and neither side appeared ready to concede core objectives. What is undeniable is the war's broader significance. It has shattered assumptions about European security, revived questions about spheres of influence, and challenged the principle that borders cannot be changed by force. For students of current affairs, this conflict is not just about Ukraine, it is about the future rules of the international system. Thank you for watching this in-depth analysis on Crash CSS. If this video helped you understand the Russia-Ukraine war with clarity and context, do subscribe to the channel, support our work by liking and sharing, and turn on the bell icon so you never miss our current affairs updates. We'll see you in the next video.